So next, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Henry Harteveldt, President of Atmosphere Research Group and a travel industry analyst. Henry will be hosting one of our best rated sessions that we've had in previous conferences. He's going to talk to thought leaders and get what is on their minds today as we are working on recovering from COVID. So Henry, welcome and thank you so much.
Audrey, thank you, and hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to join you today. I'm in San Francisco. We have a terrific panel of 4 industry thought leaders, including 2 former HEDNA presidents, Rajesh Vohra, who's director at Sarova, Hotels, Caryl Helsel, who is founder and CEO of Dragonfly Strategists, plus Andrew Rubinacci, Chief Commercial Officer at Omni Hotels and Resorts, and Traci Mercer, who is SVP Lodging, Ground, and Sea at Sabre Travel Network. So a terrific group of people with genuine global perspectives. And on the heels of Katie's wonderful presentation, I'd like to start out our conversation by asking the panelists, as we recover and progress from what we have been going through as a result of the pandemic, we know this won't be an overnight recovery, but will be a complex process. I'm curious what you all see as steps in this process that you and your organizations are looking at, because chances are, I think very likely, what you guys are exploring is also on the minds of our audience. Importantly, what benchmarks do you think are going to be most important? So I open it to anyone on the panel who would like to take the question first.
Sure, I'll have a go. Thank you for inviting me, Henry. It's kind of odd to do a HEDNA conference online. For me, HEDNA's been all about all the bits that happen outside of the conference area. So, you know, this is a strange experience, but thank you nonetheless. So I think one of the things that we talked about in preparation for this session, and I think Katie brought up very clearly in her session, is that things are very, very localized. And so I think what was going to look important to the UK market is going to be different to what looks important to other parts of continental Europe, and certainly seems to be very different to what looks important in Asia and in North America. From a European/UK perspective, we have our green shoots are very small and they're just about green. And so we have a long, long way to go. And what benchmarks we're monitoring at the moment, we're just looking to see if there's people exist. And it's really I mean, honestly, it's like that. So we're putting out, you know, marketing messages, promotional material, and just to test the water to see what is people's appetite for travel, because we just really don't have anything. I know Katie showed some numbers for the UK, but that stuff is really only essential workers, what she showed on the chart, because it's all 0 to 7, 0 to 14 days. We don't have any opening dates before the 4th of July at the earliest in the UK. So whatever is there is only what's open for essential workers. There are only people allowed to stay in hotels at the moment. So I think probably our key metric is going to be bookings and pace of bookings. That for us is we're kind of almost agnostic about ADR. We're pretty agnostic about occupancy, if I'm honest. We really just want to see, do people exist and what's their appetite like, and when do they want to book for? What's the window? What's their booking window look like? Which seems to be, from Katie's presentation, pretty damn short.
I mean, I would add to that in the U.S. market, where most of Dragonfly's clients are, that local aspect by city is truly, truly important. And, we are seeing significant pickup in resort destinations in Florida, for example, 100% weekends. So in those markets, we can't lose sight of ADR, occupancy, the traditional measures, getting back to the basics of, driving RevPAR. But it has to be a local strategy. And so you have to look at what is the opportunity locally to drive business? New York City, where I'm based, is very, very different, and we've barely opened up. Many hotels have stayed open, but they've been only really for essential workers, and there is very little demand right now for July and August here. So, we're seeing some in September and beyond, but of course, much lower than anticipated. So, strategies that we're taking is, making sure that 365 days out, we're price positioned correctly, looking at, what our comp set is doing. Are they even open? And have they adjusted their price position? Are we in line? And you have to be looking at that further out window, even though there are last minute bookings. What we saw in Florida, for example, was as soon as things opened up, immediately we just got all these bookings and we started filling up. So we don't want to be positioned from a price standpoint in the wrong place once it does release. So, I would say I was president of HEDNA after at 9/11, had to make the decision to cancel the HEDNA conference, which was supposed to be in Rome 5 days after 9/11. We, even though this is deeper and worldwide impact that this is having, we had to get back to basics after that. We couldn't lose sight of the fact that we need to communicate with our customers. We need to price position correctly. We need to still revenue manage, even though some people think it's irrelevant right now, it's not. And we've got to be positioned from a marketing standpoint for local traffic to come back first. So those are the things we're focused on.
So I'd like to just ask a follow-up question because, never or very rarely have we ever heard comments such as ADR is less important or doesn't really matter. Now, I understand why you say that, but, how do you explain this to your owners? What points are you making to them? How do you help them understand how non-normal things are and why we need to get them to potentially understand why we are looking at these non-traditional metrics or downplaying some of the traditional metrics?
I'll take that. I mean, I've got one main owner. We've got a couple others that we partner with. I think the point was made in April. When revenues went to zero, everyone's really appreciative to have anything right now. And, we went in to Caryl's point with a not a low rate, but just a base rate, not a summer rate, not a weekend rate for our resorts. And when we opened up, I just actually took them up again today to $50 for all the resorts across the board above where we would normally be at this time of the year. It really is a bizarre market. Everything's around marketing, no group sales. So sales is obviously not dead. We got to get to sales, and it's all future stuff. But for the next 3 to 6 months, it's going to be around marketing, short-term stuff. We opened a hotel yesterday with almost nothing on the books and had a ton come in, 25, 30 rooms last night came in. But it was, you're like, well, should we open or not? Well, I think we can lose less if we open, and actually we did okay. So, I think the traditional metrics of what's the booking path and all that stuff, it just isn't the same. We're kind of fighting our way through. Is it TSA arrivals? Is it flights into the market? Is it web search? Obviously, is a new tool that is much more powerful than it was during the last few downturns. So it's a lot of different things that we're taking a look at, which is different. And the owners, I think, are coming along. As long as you take them and give them the information, I think they're good with it.
Yeah, and I
and
think also,
Henry, I would say we have a hotel in Florida, a resort in Florida, that's actually going to end June better than what they budgeted last year when they budgeted, and better than last year. And that pickup has all been in the last 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
So so there again, what Rajesh said about being local with what we're doing and really focused on what's happening in each market. We can't give an anecdote for every market on a global basis because it is so different market by market. So you have to really be attuned to that. And I think owners, a lot of owners I work with, they want cash flow right now. So, that's their focus is what's my cash flow? How much am I getting in? How can I pay the mortgage? How can I pay employees? How can I bring the teams back? So, I think if we focus on that, many of them are going to be very comfortable with the fact that we're getting cash in the door.
I think as an industry, we have to really challenge ourselves to look outside of our industry and not look at the traditional benchmarks of ADR, occupancy, et cetera, and actually step way back and say, we're monitoring things like government regulations. Are we even open for travel? Can people even come in? The first thing you're gonna start to see is, where are restrictions being lifted? And is it likely it'll be local restrictions first, intra-country, intracontinental, and then global. And as we start to see that, it's going to open up different feeder markets and different channels. Liquidity is king in a time like this. And when liquidity is king, you have to get in what you can get in. And I also think we are fighting against fear. And once those regulations open, we have to put a process in place that is adopting some way and some form to give reassurance and reduce the fear level for those who aren't yet traveling. I think what we're hearing is those who are antsy and are stuck in their houses and are ready to get out, you open up and all 25 or 30 of them book, or we sell out a hotel. But the reality is we need a hell of a lot more at a hell of a lot longer time to get this industry back in. How are we as an industry going to help address that fear? And I think the safe stay programs and a variety of other cleaning things that Andrew was talking about, just that local marketing to sort of reassure people, is going to be incredibly critical.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to your question, Henry, about taking owners along is, we've never had a time where there's zero base business, right? And I think that's the kind of thing, that's the thing that scares everybody to hell. Where, you know, as Tracy said, liquidity is king, as you know, Caryl and Andrew indicated, it's all about getting some cash through the door. We've got basic bills to pay, and at the moment there's no cash, then any cash is worth something. And I think that's kind of the reason why I said something somewhat controversially that we're kind of ADR agnostic, because we just want to see that people are interested in moving, and we want to see that they feel safe to travel, and that we've given them enough reasons to think that it's a good idea. And that to us is everything at this stage.
Absolutely.
So to that
and I agree with that. But what I said before about, you know, and Andrew mentioned, as we see a market coming back, we can't lose sight of ADR then. So, you know, it's kind of a twofold. Like, of course, the demand has to start returning first, right? But then I don't want the message to be, don't worry about your rate at all, because once we do start building, we have to start again worrying about our rate, right? And where we're selling, and you know, what impacts that demand, what's slowing it down? Is it slowing down at all? Can we get even more rate? We've got to, you know, we have to focus on that, of course. So it's, as we all know, none of us have ever been in this situation before. I think, you know, one of the things we have to do as companies is, from that safety standpoint, we have to start having conversations with people at big corporations. You know, my husband works for a very, very large corporation that does business with hotels worldwide, big group business, big business travel. And they've stopped all travel now and all conferences now through like next June. And I'm just like, why? So we have to partner with some of these companies to figure out what is going to make you comfortable to send your employees on the road again.
Right. Well, that's actually a good segue into the next question I'd like to get your perspectives on, which is which channels and which segments do we believe will be the fastest to recover? There's been a lot of discussion about business travel, and here we all are on Zoom. And will business travel be as strong as it once was? Meetings, conferences, and conventions, what will that recovery look like? What will the pace of it look like? Obviously, science and epidemiology, two words we really didn't discuss a lot within the travel industry, are now kings and queens of this recovery. And there's an article today in the Wall Street Journal about what will business travel recovery look like. There's a huge amount of debate about this. Our research shows that travelers and travel managers think there will be a recovery to pre-pandemic levels, but it will take time, of course. CEOs seem to have a different opinion. So let's just take a look at it. Where do you see, what will lead the recovery? And importantly, what segments, which channels will be first, and which channels may be lagging
I think right now answering this question is like, it's equivalent to, I don't know, belly buttons. Everyone has an opinion on how this is gonna happen.
Yeah, Tracy, you sit over one of the biggest belly buttons out there, Sabre. I mean, you can look at the
Thank you.
at the data and take a look at the pace and things like that. So I realize that none of us have a crystal ball, but where do we see, the results coming from? Whether it's from the data you see on bookings or research you may have conducted or other dynamics.
Well, I'll talk about the U.S. market. Well, we mentioned leisure travel. Leisure travelers are fine. What scares me is the Tuesday after Labor Day. That's when I get really scared. Business travel isn't coming back anytime soon. We have very, very, very little on the books now. Groups, they're gone through the summer. We've got a couple trickling in. We actually had an incentive trip last weekend at one of the resorts. They said they were coming hell or high water, and they came. So there'll be a little, but it's 95% less. And my concern is that's not going to change really all that much through the rest of the year. Maybe we'll get 20% of the group we had if things go really well in Q4. So you're really reliant on leisure travel and business travel. Even if people want to come back, and let's say there's a vaccine, everything's good. Companies have been drastically hurt with this. All the travel budgets have been cut to zero. Well, let's just be clear. So it's going to be a really, really tough fall. Hopefully we get back to some normalcy in 2021 at some point. But as far as business travel and group, it's just not happening anytime soon.
Yeah. We're seeing very similar. Obviously at Sabre, we're heavily tilted for our lodging occupancy into the corporate and business travel space. And we do see this term green shoots is popping up everywhere, but we do see some green shoots. And yesterday we have a new content services for lodging platform, which is sort of a source agnostic platform that we're offering to agencies. And it was actually our largest booking day on this new technology yesterday. Wow. So that's really surprising. I also believe we're seeing cancellation rates that are quite high as well. So the extent that there is confidence and then we pull back, confidence and then we pull back. From a segment level though, I think the economy and mid-scale, well, particularly the mid-scale hotels are going to do the fastest recovery. Super high-end hotels I'll be curious to see if they will suffer from the same consequence as was done post-financial crisis, when the perception of a 5-star was sort of not well appreciated in the business. It sort of had a taboo title to it if you stayed at a 4 Seasons in that sort of financial crisis time. I don't think that will happen here. So we will see a bit of a mix shift. And referring earlier to a question, there was a comment around, are we seeing something different with private accommodations, Airbnb, VRBO, that sort of thing? Right. We are seeing steady recovery in that, and seeing that obviously tilts more towards leisure. What we've also seen, which relates to what segments are recovering, is a step change in the adoption of work from anywhere technology and virtual technologies, as we're seeing here. We probably made a 5-year step change advancement in the adoption of these technologies. And that's going to materially change how you think about business travel, group travel, and how it's mandated. So not only are we coming out of this with probably a smaller corporate entity or corporate circle because of lack of liquidity, there's going to be a material reduction in companies that are out there. But once that corporate and business travel is back, there's going to be a reasonable reduction in the shape of that given this adoption in technologies. That's my hypothesis. My belly button, I guess.
Tracy, I agree with you on that. I think, so many companies had digital efforts in place to migrate live training to digital training and webcasting and all of that. And the escalation of how rapidly they've gotten to that in the last 90 days has been unbelievable. Mm-hmm. So it's going to materially change conferences in the future, where there may be a mix of, on-site and virtual, and our hotels are going to have to be prepared to support that technologically, and there's just going to continue the evolution that should have or would have taken 5 years, like you said, has happened in pretty much 90 days.
Yeah, I think there'll be a blended solution too, right? So I think there'll be attendees and virtual attendees, and we need to be ready and ratchet it up to get ready for that. But I refer to the comment I made at the beginning, which is that this is a strange HEDNA conference for me. And when I said at that, at the beginning, that there's a, that what I find most valuable out of the HEDNA conferences is almost the sessions that happen around the sessions and not the sessions themselves. And I think that kind of, I know officers we call them water cooler moments. I don't know what the conference equivalent is. The the snack bar moment or whatever it is. But that bit where you sit and have a coffee with somebody that you bump into and you talk business and you learn stuff and you network. And I think so I do agree that there are certain types of business, and Carol's right. I think training is a classic, where a lot of that will happen online, but. Would we want to do every HEDNA conference virtually? I suspect not. This is a poor substitute for what a HEDNA conference provides. And so I don't think long term, maybe short term until we have a better way of working, but I think long term this will come back. So there'll be certain segments which will definitely rebound, but I'm not sure that all of them will.
So let me ask a question about the recovery in terms of channels, since we are distribution focused. Which channels are you seeing perform better? What opportunities does this crisis create in terms of driving your distribution to the channels that you feel produce the best return? Rajesh and Andrew, I'd like to start with you two, since you are our hotel operators.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Google, as I said, it's all about marketing. Sales, while not dead, it's not king any longer. And for an upper upscale luxury hotels that rely 50% on group, sales was a big piece of what we did. So it is all about marketing and those marketing channels that you can go ahead and use and target. So social has become really, really important, especially when you talk about hitting local people. You can really target them. Google, those types of things. OTAs are of course important, but they go out to broad masses, and they have very little targeted stuff that you can really use compared to some of the other channels that are out there. And then obviously, direct channels and driving things there. So it is a bit of mix, and I think it is changing from what it was, 3 months ago, where more social, more, search and different types of things are really paying off compared to what we've even done a couple of billboards, believe it or not. Just because we know we've got a resort outside of Austin. If I hit the right markets in Dallas and the right markets in Houston, as people are driving and thinking about getting out of the house, and they've been successful. So it's really changed quite a bit, and I wouldn't have done that 2 months ago.
Rajesh?
Yeah, I think the advertising mix I don't want to speak to, because I think it's kind of outside of what I get involved in on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of the mix of distribution channels, I think we are, because we know that the MICE business or convention business and whatever is going to be slow. Andrew's absolutely right. The work of the sales team to bring all that stuff in is not there. It will be there again, but it isn't there today. And so it's all about transient. And I don't know whether the consumer thinks as deeply about booking an OTA versus booking a brand.com as we would like to believe that they do. I think they kind of look for where they find their comfort place, or whether that's because they recognize the OTA, or whether because they recognize the hotel brand, or whether it's because it's a good deal. And I think so. I think it's all about transient. I'm not sure that it's, there was much, foretelling of this might be the moment of inflection for the OTAs. I don't think that's the case. It might be, but I think there's evidence is very, very scant to represent that. And I think actually people don't think as deeply as we do about that channel. So I just think it's about transient channels, whatever they might be. And again, let's test the market and see which ones are prepared to move. Is it going to be the North American customer? I suspect not. Will it be the near Europeans? I'm talking the UK market. Yeah, sure, it might be. Almost certainly it's the other city centres in the UK that are going to move around themselves, right? People from Edinburgh to London and London to Edinburgh, vice versa, etc. And I think that's kind of where we see the market, at least in the short run. And I don't have any visibility more than 6 months out. And if anybody does, then they're welcome to explain, but I don't have any visibility further out than that. That's a long way to look at the market.
I did want to add one quick thing that I forgot. Our call center, believe it or not, in the last 2 weeks has beat the call volumes from last year, same time. So it's been, really shocking on how that's changed, and there's just a lot more questions. A lot of people are asking, how are you doing this? And a lot of people are ready to book, and conversions actually are, pretty good. So it's not just all questions they're hanging up. And it has kind of shocked me. We're up 9% last week over the same week last year, which was a bit shocking, and we're seeing the same thing happen this week. So it's interesting.
So Traci, can I ask you, what is Sabre seeing from the travel agency channel? Because, one thing that I read early on that I haven't seen much about lately is that there were some challenges with people who had booked on the OTAs with getting service and getting cancels processed and getting money refunded. But when they had a travel agent representing them, that it actually was a better experience for them. Do you think that's going to play into it at all, Traci?
I would love to say that's the case. Certainly, I think there's a different service level when you're using a travel agent. There's just that, to Andrew's point, there's a level of human connection that people want and human reassurance. Call center, travel agency, someone where I can talk to them is increasing in importance and relevancy right now. From an overall shift, though, the challenges we faced, Sabre as well as others, is that many hotels and many brands and many individual entities were closing and were closing in such rapid cadence because of the regulations. There wasn't time to notify all the travelers going forward, or there is still demand out there. We have medical travel, we have press travel, we have a variety of different types of travel that are still happening and coming through the corporate channel, as I mentioned. And so finding and ensuring that the hotel they're booking is actually really open and going to be open the day they show up and that something won't change has been something that we've been managing, and we're super dependent and working in partnership with our hotels and brands. And to be fair, when you're a franchise entity, representing your entire chain, you've got thousands of hotels. You don't necessarily know what each owner is doing. So it's a very dynamic, and I think that's where communication with all your distribution channels is going to be critically important to make sure that information is up to date and that we know what's going on.
So I just want to remind the audience, if you've got questions, please submit them through the Q&A button that you should find at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We'll be going to those in a moment, but before we do, another question for the panel. The recovery and our progress is a catalyst for change within our organizations. There is a critical need now for even closer working relationships between departments than has ever existed. Rajesh, as you said in our prep call, if we don't change now, we never will. But what do we change and how and why? I'll throw that open to the group.
Get rid of silos.
I beg your pardon?
Rajesh said, get rid of silos. I said everything. Yeah, I've been running around the building here saying we're a $2 billion startup. Everything's on the table. We're able to centralize more. We had things actually in finance and HR we were going to centralize. It was going to take 2 years. They'll be done in 3 months at the end, as we open up. I'm clustering sales operations in hotels. I've clustered more in revenue management. I've put together a field marketing group. I think everything should be looked at, and can you do something different, better, more efficient? Now's your opportunity to do it.
Yeah, we had lots of ideas about how things might improve, and there's always barriers, right? People love their silos and they love to hold on to their little area and their little pocket of comfort. And guess what? They're very pliable today. And that makes life much easier, and you can get across ideas and and people are, I mean, you know, I had a meeting with a group of housekeeping, executive housekeepers, changing of the way that we might run the housekeeping department. There was not one dissenting voice. I promise you, 3 months ago, there would have been 200 reasons why we've always done it this way. That's just the way it is, right? And I think, you know, so I think, yes, to Andrew's point, we're changing everything. We're looking at everything afresh. People are pliable, and we needs must when the devil drives, right? You don't have one hat anymore. If you did, too tough. You're no longer. You have to wear multiple hats if you want to survive in this environment, and that's where it's at.
I think it's also a really important time to start saying, what are going to be my core competencies? What am I going to do? And what am I going to partner or outsource on? Because there's so many things that we've adopted as, in my days as hoteliers, or even at the company that I'm at now, not running an individual hotel, but you adopt, you take on, you do in-house, when now's the time to step back and say, where can I partner? Where should I turn to a technology outsourcing or a partnership outsourcing or some sort of a hybrid model to focus on what I need to do and what I need to do well. You know, things like technology are incredibly important as we go forward. Providing a touchless end-to-end experience for travelers is likely going to be a necessity in the future. Providing an omni-channel experience with consistent content is going to be a need. And as you reflect on your organization, there's lots of reasons as to why I know this sits in marketing and this sits in revenue management and that sits at corporate. All of those silos need to be broken down. And I completely agree. We at Sabre have gone through a major, or in the midst of a major restructuring to organizationally realign and doing things that would have taken, I don't know, 9, 10, 12 months and doing them in 6-8 weeks to just accelerate it. It's amazing when your valuation as a company goes down and you have zero cash flows, how open people are to ideas of changing how you operate. Yeah. So it's been, in some ways, for those people who love change, it's been refreshing and exciting and stressful. For those people who don't like change and have historically been the ones saying this is how we've always done it, it has been probably pretty rattling to their core.
Correct.
Many of our hotels have taken this opportunity to say, how many times does a hotel literally get to shut down and completely reopen as if they're a brand new hotel? Mm-hmm. So, you know, what would we be if this hotel was just launching and didn't have history? What would we look at? How would we structure our teams? How would we structure our, as Traci said, outsource versus in-source relationships? How would we work regionally or corporately or individually, independently? So, and you know, many of the GMs that we work with are saying this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to relaunch how we do business and to tear it down to there are no preconceived notions, which is, it's tough because people have to experience that change, and that may mean some resources are not coming back. I mean, there's a lot of change coming down the pike, but it's also a huge opportunity for us to reinvent how we do business.
So one last question before we go to the audience questions. How has this pandemic challenged you and changed you as leaders within your organization? What have you learned about yourselves? And what are you doing differently?
Initially, I learned that I can stay up all night to, you know, apply for things with the Small Business Administration and PPP, and I can stay up all night every night and actually win in the end because I did that first. So, because I go into like fight mode when things get tough, right? So, but in the end, I think I've learned that listening and empathy go a really long way as a leader. And so really being able to listen to clients, to empathize with their situation, to show compassion, grace, is truly important when people all over the world are, you know, walking through the same thing. You know, we need to be leaders with a heart and with empathy.
Right. I think certainly compassion is a really good word. I completely agree. The other thing that I've learned, maybe not so much about myself, but about the people in our business, is that the people in our business love our business. And I think that I've really learned. And it's been the most heartening thing about this. And there's been plenty of dark days and plenty of trials and tribulations. But one thing I've really, really appreciated is how much our people love doing what they do and how much they miss it. And you know, that's not just about income and all the rest of it, because most of our staff are being looked after by the government anyway, even if they're not working. So it's not even about that. It's just about they want to be back at work. They want to see their colleagues and they want to look after guests. And that's the thing that I've learned above everything else.
For me, it was, you know, early on in this, the crisis, it was, if you could think it, you should do it. You know, things that would be unthinkable, you're like, well, maybe we should close a hotel, or maybe we should, you know, within 3 days, you're like, close them all. It was amazing the speed of change that happened. You know, so it was, you know, I know I'm the type of person who likes to take a breath, make sure we're doing the right thing, and, you know, it was, you know, interesting to just, you know, if you could think it, do it. And then obviously, you know, the impact on the people, and it has been interesting to see other people's styles too, especially as you know, get out. And I've only been a year and a half in this company, so to see how people react to crisis, and some people, you know, do great, and some people you really have to pull along and help, and back to the compassion, because they're just as shell shocked as everyone else. So it's been, you know, definitely a growth experience for I think everyone involved.
I would totally agree. I think for me, initially seeing the stress behaviors across the industry, seeing those who were just denying what was going on for so long, I feel incredibly privileged to work for a company in which our CEO has lived through various and managed through various crises. And when you've been there, done that, that brings a level of calmness, of cool-headedness, and of focus. And that helped our organization to manage through that. Just clear, calm, focus, and relentless pursuit of the end goal. And I think it's important for all of us, no matter how bad it gets through this, there's a vision of what we want to do. And I think Rajesh and Andrew hit on this as Rose Caryl. People love this industry. And our teams love this industry. When I had to furlough an employee, she cried when I was telling her she was going on furlough. And she said, I'm crying not because I'm leaving, I'm crying because I have such great projects that are going to now be delayed 3 more months, and it would really be better if I could just get them done. And that is just such a commitment to this industry that is something I've always loved. And I really loved seeing that come out of people. Unfortunately, it came out because of these circumstances. But yeah, I think that was some of the things that I learned through this, and for myself, that you can't move too quickly when crisis hits. It's right. You just get it done, because I love that line. If you can think it, do it. Move quickly. And this certainly taught many of us that's the need.
We have a number of questions from the audience. I'll try to get through as many as we're able in the time we've got. There was a really good one from Ludovic, who asked, when do we see the recovery happening, getting back to 2019 levels of revenue and profit? We're somewhere, it seems like, between 20 and 50% or so of previous year levels. I'd like to get your perspectives. How long do you think this recovery will take?
I think it's localized, regionalized, as we said before. It's going to depend on where you are, what mix you hit, the regulations in your area. I can say for my area and kind of what we're looking at right now, we aren't, especially when you gave that caveat of profitability and revenue. Profitability may hit before some of it, honestly. If you take a lot of cost out, the costs are going to be slower to come back in. But if we're going to measure by RevPAR, it's in my opinion, it's 2023, which is depressing, but that's what I think.
I was going to say the same thing. Regionally based, we'll have some hotels that'll beat 2019 next year, but I think as an industry, it's probably 2023. to Tracy's point, profitability though will be sooner. We have learned how to operate hotels at 5%, 10%, 15% occupant, all the way up, and really are pressure testing on what's really needed to give the guest experience you want. You have to do the experience, but it's dramatically different from what always was. And I think the profitability for the industry will be much better.
Well, I think when you look at what Jan at Star said, early on about the recovery after 9/11, then the recovery was extended after 2008, 2009. I think we're looking, I agree with Tracy. 2023 to get back to where we were. 2019, we were flat pretty much. To get to any type of growth, probably even further beyond that. But I can't see it coming back before 2023 unless some sort of miracle happens.
So I can't disagree with such an august body of leaders. I can't disagree with any of them. So I'm going to have to go with 2023 too, or else I'll look like the idiot.
We have an interesting question from Petya. What changes need to happen with the technologies that we are using for our distribution and other services? What in order to address our current and future challenges and needs?
Our challenges, our technology changes are mostly not in the distribution space. They're in the guest experience part. I think that's where we're really investing our time and money. It's about, how do we facilitate online check-in, which everybody seems to be very keen on now that they never were, and online checkout, and how do we, and contactless experiences in all sorts of parts of the business. And that's, that's with our own staff and with our customers. I think all of that was never a question before, never a priority before. So I think that's where our technology investment is going to go into that side of the business, not in distribution.
All right. Well, I wish we had more time because I think we could certainly go on for several more minutes, but we don't, unfortunately. I would like to thank Caryl, Traci, Rajesh, and Andrew very much for your participation, for your great insights, for sharing everything that you did. I hope everyone in the audience found this useful. Audrey, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Henry. Thanks so much to all of our panelists. Truly amazing. That was fabulous. I could watch another hour of the questions and answering, so thank you. Wonderful, insightful information from our industry leaders that Henry was able to get together. I'm sure we got some information, lots of information that we can use as we navigate the new normal, both as the teams and the panelists said, both as leaders and team members. Because maybe even though we're not a leader in our organization, we're a peer, we're a colleague, there's always opportunity to empathize and help each other as we get through COVID and we get through to recovery. So thank you again, Henry, and to all of our leadership panels. Much appreciated.